and perhaps some of the longer-serving members on a finance board can help me out here. I don't think we did it that way, Mr. Walsh. I think it was proposed at one point that it was that way, and I think that if I remember correctly, it was Mr. Kiley who pointed out that, A, we can't order it until we have the full amount approved, because we
Correct.
can't order for half a truck. That we can't order a $1 million truck if we only have 500,000 approved.
Yeah, I would suspect
So-
the bond council would not approve of us doing it in two pieces, based
And then
on
we
what he's told us.
Correct, and then we looked at, we're going to bond it anyway, so let's bond it, and I think we bought it rather than putting away 500,000 the first year. We basically bonded the entire amount and went through it at that point. We're going to have to check probably the minutes to confirm exactly what I'm saying, but I think we went ahead and bonded it right from the start.
Mike, I think I know what you're talking about. It becomes sort of funny. Remember about 3 years ago, we bought a half a truck? That was a joke, and then the next year we bought another half a truck, and if you recall.
Well, in any event, this is something that's really...
Does Mr. Hiller have an idea, as opposed to just going from memory, why don't we go what actually happened?
Just quickly, Mr. Hiller,
I
because
know,
we're kind
I
of far
can't
afield
tell you
here.
which year, but I know we did buy half a truck one year and half a
We
truck
did.
the next year. How we did it, I'm going to have to go back
We did it through
the whole
Mr.
legacy
Kiley?
of it.
I think, again, it's memory because the numbers here aren't nearly big enough to justify the spend. I believe we did it over the course of 2 years, and I believe we did it through the non-recurring capital at that point in time, over 2 years, hence the half a truck in year one and half a truck in year two.
You're right.
But I think we did bump up against some financing issues, whether it was through bonding or it was through the audit. I forget the exact nature of it, so I don't think it was the recommended practice going forward, as I recall.
That's one of the issues I think is Mr. Polito brings up, and bond counsel might, the question is, are we buying the front half or the back half?
Right. In any event, the item's not before us. We're just kind of trying to get a sense of where we're going with this, but certainly for our quarterly meeting when this does come before us, we're going to want that information on the backstory about how we've done it in the past, and obviously we're going to want bond counsel present to guide us in terms of how we finance it in the future. Mr. Walsh?
Actually, I'd like the fiscal officer to get the answer of how we did it, what bond counsel's recommendation was at the time, and whether it can be done now, because I think it could go into whether we want to add on to a capital project now. And budget it over 2 years. So I'd like to find out what the current state of affairs is, and if you can find out what bond counsel's recommendation was then, and check with bond counsel now to see whether that's what their opinion is in that regard. It's a sizable truck. It's going to take almost a year and a half to build, as the chief has said, and it's still a possibility to do it that way. So if we could just get an answer to that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. You got that? Thanks. Mr. Stone, you've been waiting patiently, please.
Have we ever explored any grants for any of the, not for the vehicles or anything, but for like the thermal imaging camera?
Yes, we do.
Have
And,
grants available?
you put in for grants, and, if you get it, you just fight for it. We got quite a few grants on, on other equipment. But a lot of times, the smaller towns, volunteer towns, they'll sort of sway towards them if they need 2 or 3, rather than go to a career department or a city like ours, which they feel is a little more financially stable than a small town, with a population of 15, 20,000. So they sort of sway toward them. We do put in for grants. We have received this past year money, matter of fact, $15,000 from GE. They gave us to buy different equipment with, which we just received that check, and I still have it. Matter of fact, I have to call Mr. Hiller on it to see how we're going to, work it and where we're going to put it. And I didn't even let the selectman know. He doesn't even know we have it right now.
He does now.
He's duly
It
noted
was
now.
just received.
I think the whole town does now.
I'll see you in the morning.
We just received it. But no, we have put in for grants. We're pretty good on that. I have a few officers that are really hot on working on that. I have my deputy working with them on it. So when we see a grant, we go after it. Do we always get it? No. Yeah, They look at the overall financial thing and, the towns and cities that really. Well, yeah, that's right, too. The training center, we just we'll have that, they're doing plans on it now, engineering everything. That's a county training center, and we got 26 million on that from the state. And that's in the works now. What are they saying, 3 years or 2 years? It'll probably
Within
be
the
up.
next few years, yeah. The bonding was approved at the state level just recently.
And they don't move very fast either, you know. We get it, it took about 2-3 years just to get it engineered out there, and
Mr. Stone, did you have anything further? No, I'm done. Okay. I just want to make sure before we go to repeat customers, is there anyone who has not spoken yet who would like to speak on the fire department budget? Ms. Gaffney?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good
It's
evening.
just a basic question, and since we have you here, how many fire stations do we have in Fairfield, and what is the total fleet of our fire department vehicles?
Okay, we have 5 fire stations in Fairfield. We have the Center Fire Station on Reef Road. We have Engine 2 and Ladder 2 Company on 600 Jennings Road. We have Engine 3 Company on Jackman Avenue in Stratfield. We have Engine 4 Company, which is stationed in Southport. We have Engine 5 Company, which is stationed in Greenfield Hill. Every district is covered with a piece of fire apparatus and a ladder truck and emergency vehicles. Our minimum manpower is 22 men on duty at all times. There are 3 men on a piece of apparatus. And what's important is the district that we cover, our response time that we arrive on a scene is most of the time 3 to 5 minutes from the time that we're dispatched, and which is very important. And what the underwriters and insurance look at is immediate response. So when you call 911, we're on the road and we're going, and that's what's important. That's how we get our rating also.
So is the total number of firefighters right now approximately 110?
No, we have 98 firefighters right now. Well, actually, it's 68. There's 3 on every. If you have 5 engines, multiply that by 3, and we have a ladder truck with 3 men on it, and 3 men on the ladder rescue in the center, and that comes out to 22 men per shift.
It's 23 men per shift.
23.
23 per
That was the
shift?
vacancy. I'm sorry, I left that out on that rescue ladder truck. So it's the minimum by contract, 23 men on a shift
Okay.
responding. And again, the important thing is the immediate response. When you call, we're on the road.
And some of those men on the shifts might be repeats, so that the total number of employed firefighters is
Right now, we have, okay, well, I'll do the math quick. We have 88 suppression firefighters, which comprise of 4 assistant chiefs, 20 lieutenants, and what is that, 64 firefighters, I believe. In addition to that, there's a chief, a deputy chief. There's 2 staff administrative assistants in the front office, a fire marshal, a deputy fire marshal, a fire inspector, and a training assistant chief. I think that's everybody. That covers everyone.
Okay. And what is the total number of the fleet, the fire department vehicles?
All the vehicles?
Yes.
I
Even
believe
if
it's 20, I believe it's 26, including the staff cars and everything, and the
Okay.
reserve pieces that we have.
And a mechanic's vehicle, that includes just about everything.
Okay, thank you. That's puts it in perspective. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Gaffney. Actually, I'm going to go myself since I haven't gone yet. Just a quick question. With respect to the staff vehicle, one of the things I've heard from the police department is that they're no longer making Crown Vics, so they're kind of having a transition to a different brand of vehicle. I'm assuming you'll be getting a different vehicle, but in terms of your existing staff vehicles, are you having problems getting parts for those? Are we going to see replacements for those coming sooner down the line because the fact they're no longer manufacturing the vehicle and the parts are becoming more scarce?
They stopped making Crown Vics. They went to a different type of Ford is coming out with another police vehicle. Dodge came out with a police vehicle, and also the Chevys have came out with a police vehicle. The next round, it's going to be, we're going to have to see what we get and which is the best way. I like to standardize, because when you standardize, you get parts for the same vehicle. When you get 2 Dodges and 3 Fords and 2 Chevys, well, you know, you have to get parts. And right now, because we have Fords, Crown Vics, we have in our maintenance shop repairs, in other words, equipment to put on that stuff, fan belts, tires and everything like that. And
Right.
I try to standardize, but in this day and age with the way things are and the economy the way it is, you know, I can't answer you where we're going or who's going to come out, because every manufacturer will come out and try to get into the industry and say, gee, we're going to make police vehicles. One year, Buick came out with a police vehicle. I was still on shift then, and you know, it didn't even last a year. I mean, the front
Barely make
ends,
regular cars. Okay.
the front ends were going on. It just wasn't made for that. And I've been very satisfied with the Crown Vics and all. It's a police package.
Right. Now, to that point, would it make sense then to coordinate with the police department for, you know, the staff-type vehicles, ones that are not patrol cars or, you know, command vehicles? Would it make sense to coordinate with them so you have getting the same make and model so you can maybe
I
get a
do
bulk
that,
discount on
sir.
parts?
I
You
work
do?
with Chief
Excellent.
McNamara. We started that last year. It's worked out real good. And matter of fact, this year when we received one more car, I piggyback on Chief McNamara, the police department. And he's real good in helping me put that together. Matter of fact, his mechanic helped me to put the specs together on that. We work together, and I'm not saying it because the chief's here in the police department. There has been a big change, and we work together pretty close. We're very fortunate.
That's
in
good to know. Excellent.
Fairfield.
All right, anybody else at this time? Mr. Walsh, and then we'll go to Ms. McCarthy-Vahey.
Chief, would you be able to get us the fire truck replacement program that you currently have in place?
Yes, I can.
That'd be great, thanks. Some other questions. The longevity, no, the work attendance bonus, why is that going down by like 50%? Is that a contractual thing, or is that
It's a contractual thing.
the rate got cut in half?
Yeah, go ahead. You can argue something.
That went down just the past history in the past few years now. That if the firefighters with perfect work attendance get that bonus, and that has just declined in the past few years, so the bonus declines.
Is there a reason why that's been going down that you know of administratively?
Just,
More
If-
sickly.
Mr.
Mr.
Chair, would you
Tadros,
ask
yes.
Ms. Gardner to answer that?
Okay, Mrs. Gardner.
Excuse me, that's actually moot now because the work attendance bonus goes away in total with the new contract.
okay, I didn't know that.
So we can reduce that
That's-
budget line by $9,200?
That's going to go away, yes.
Okay, so will that be a number that's replaced when you do the rest of the numbers based on the
Yes,
current
that's going to be
contract?
one of those that
Okay.
is affected in that new spreadsheet.
Thank you very much.
I didn't know that.
We didn't know that,
Okay.
I'd be happy to keep that money, though, if you would like. Funny use for it, so. I guess not. Yeah.
The motor vehicle fuel and lube line has gone up about 17%. Is that because of the cost of gasoline?
Yes. yeah.
Diesel fuel.
And
Diesel.
diesel fuel, oil, everything. And matter of fact, it's ridiculous the way when it's here, there.
Yeah, so
And
that's
I
just
will
the-
have to say, Twig's pretty good in trying to look down the road. If we buy now, rather than 3 or 4 months from now, we can get it cheaper, you know, and, you know, that she works, I have to give her credit there. She works that out pretty good in looking over all the numbers. And we try to fill up our tanks. I know we got a pretty good discount. I think it was, about a year ago or so, and we filled up all our tanks because if you don't get it today,
Yeah.
tomorrow it's going to be another 5-10 cents a gallon.
Right. The automobile maintenance repair line's gone up by about 12%. Does that have something to do with the age of our fleet, or is it just the cost of maintenance?
Well, we're gambling here, Jim.
Yeah.
We're trying to hold the cost down. All right? Now, if it's going to work, I don't know. We could have a lot of breakdowns. We could need more parts. I'm gambling, trying to keep the cost down. And if something should happen to the apparatus or something, well, I'll have to come back in front of the Board of Finance. We have 2 great mechanics, and I really believe strongly, and I push in preventative maintenance. If something doesn't look good or so, let's replace it. So we try to keep our equipment up. So, and I'm being honest with you, we're gambling here to try to keep the cost down.
The
Do I
maintenance,
think it'll work? Yes.
Chief, on the maintenance repair materials, I presume that's on the firehouse stuff, it's going up by about 67%. about $10,000 over what it was last year's. Is that for any specific projects? I presume that's at firehouses, am I correct, or not?
Well, our firehouses really, we have to keep up, they're getting old.
Yeah.
I mean, we have one firehouse 118 years old.
Mhm.
We have, take Engine 2. I know it needs new siding. The roof was leaking and so forth and so on. That was built in 1960. The center station was 1954. We just had to replace sinks and different things there. So, you know, it's like anything else. It's starting to age. So we have to, you know, do more. I know a little bit about buildings, and, you know, we're trying to hold the cost down there too, but, you know, I can't help. We replaced the roof, I think, about 3 years ago at Station 1. Station 2, we had a roof, well, we did a little, I call it Band-Aiding. I probably shouldn't use that word, hoping that it wouldn't leak, you know.
Yeah.
And it holds up maybe for about a year. We can get away with it, but that's why it went up. And the cost on that went up too, when we call for some repairs on the firehouse, you know. See.
So is the cost, the extra 10,000, is that for like a specific project, like the siding as you mentioned, or anything specific?
Yeah, I deal with, you know, Public Works on that. Some
Yeah.
of it comes out of their budget. If they're short on their budget, we work it out with them, and it has to come out of our budget if we need it. You know, they got hit pretty hard, as you know, with the oil tanks leaking. The Public Works Department got hit pretty hard. So there was other repairs that I needed that I had to use out of our budget. I
Mr.
try
Walsh,
not-
I'm sorry. Were you finished?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I try not to use it that much.
Okay. I just wanted to jump in if I could. Mr. DeWitt had a question. I completely missed him, so if I can just go to him and then I
Sure.
can come back to you. Thank you. Appreciate it. And I didn't forget you, Mr. Mark. Thank you.
I'm fine. Just real quick, maybe for Mr. Hiller, or the chief, the payroll line does have a 0.53% increase. That's obviously not included because of the, is not inclusive of the contract. So what is that extra 0.5%?
Those
Well, I
were
believe that's
primarily
Go
step
ahead.
increases that were.
Just step increase.
And also, there are two personnel in here who are members of the Town Hall Employees Association, where there was a negotiated contract.
Right.
And so that increase is in there too.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. Okay, great, thanks.
Okay. Am I missing anyone down here? Okay. Mrs. McCarthy-Vahey, floor is yours.
Thanks. I just actually want to follow up on what Selectman Walsh was saying. It would be great to know if there are specific plans for that extra maintenance, repair materials, the extra funding. I think it'd be great to find out what those specifically are. That would be helpful.
I can
it sounded-
have a list for you, Chris.
That would be
if you'd
great.
like, you know, if you give me a week or so.
That'd be great. Yes,
Turn in a
thank
list
you.
to Mr. Tetro and, you know, and you.
The other question that I had is actually a question/request. You do go after grants, and I know that there are various members of the fire department who aggressively seek grants, as well as in other departments in town, police and public works. And in looking at my two budget books, I was thinking it would be great if we could have, similar to the Board of Education, a grant breakout, so that, in other words, we have a sense of what the grants are that are coming in to the fire department. We know where those monies are coming from and what they're being put towards. You referenced, Mr. Ried, the Deputy Chief, that you work with Mr. Hiller in terms of where those go, and it'd be great to make it more transparent so that we can all see what grants we are receiving as a town and where those monies are being applied, and particularly if there are staff impacts, that would be helpful, because I know that's going to come up with the
You
health
know,
department budget
It would
as
be very
well.
beneficial to the town, and I know maybe you're not going to like this, but that's okay. A lot of these towns and cities have grant writers, and that's what they do. And when I go around and try to find out if that's working, they all come out ahead, because that's what this individual who's trained on that knows what he's doing. He's a grant writer. So he's looking at every grant that's out there, whether it's for a building, whether it's for trucks, whether it's for training. And meanwhile, you know, we're just doing it. The fire department does a little, the police department does a little. And, you know, we do a good job on it. The people I have, my staff, I always look at the resources that I have. They do a good job, but they're not really up on it and what's out there, and a grant writer knows how to go after that and write that up. So, I think it's a thing in the future that we should consider is hiring a grant writer, because I think in the long run, it will pay off for our town.
And I think you raised a good point, and part of why I'm highlighting this, and thanks to Mr. Stone for bringing it up originally, is that, we do have a lot of dedicated employees who do this work as part of their jobs, and the
Right.
town benefits from it, and it's tremendous. And I think we need to understand where we're benefiting. It'd be great to know what grant monies specifically come in, since you're the first group that I'm recognizing this with. That would also be great to know, is what the grant monies are that are coming in, and how much that is. But
So that's
it
a
is
formal
something.
request, I'm guessing, right?
Yes,
Mr.
please.
Hiller, is that something that you could assist with, or is that something that
We
could,
miss some grants too, Chris, at times.
is it something that could come from the fire department?
Oftentimes, it's the department themselves that really becomes aware of it. I mean, we can assist, obviously, in the process, but the departments become,
Right.
they're within trade associations and organizations, they get the communications. Sometimes we get stuff, I know Senator McKinney has been instrumental in getting a couple of grants for the fire department.
Right. Okay. So, I do want to move things along a little bit, but I just want to make sure that everybody's got their questions out there before I turn it over to the public. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, all set for now? All right, at this point, I will throw it open to public comment. I would just set the ground rules. If you could just keep it relatively brief, I don't think we have a whole lot of public comment tonight. It's comments, not questions, and if you could just come up beside Deputy Chief Ried and use the mic. He doesn't bite, as far as I know, so feel free to stand up there.
Not on Tuesdays.
He certainly wouldn't do that to you, Mrs. Barrett.
Not to
Testing
me,
one.
no.
Good evening, Ms. Barrett, how are you?
Good evening. First of all, I want to start my remarks with, I want to thank all of you who are volunteers of our town, because I sat there for 18 years, so I know what you're going through and the
Poor
hours.
soul.
Well, it's survival. And back in the old days, we did buy parts of trucks, but it's a new day. The other thing I want to do is commend the chief and the team that we have. And I really want to highlight our maintenance department, because the reason those trucks are on the road is because we have a skillful maintenance department that makes sure. And we're really patching some up, and we'll get you that list of the things you need to see. But we appreciate your support. I know it's lean and mean times, but we're counting on you. So I thank you. And I think this is the first time we've had the number of fire commissioners in our presence.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for attending, to all the members of the Fire Commission who are here tonight. Any other members of the public? Yes, please, come on up. Yep. And just as a reminder, we don't all know everybody, so just if you could state your name and address or occupation for the record, that'd be much appreciated. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Charlene Lebo. On the Fire Commission as chairperson. I want to thank everyone this evening, and I'm looking for the support in this budget from the Board of Selectmen and also the Board of Finance. This budget is very lean. It's under 1%. We do have an obligation to the town as safety, so I really counting on you to do the right thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public wish to speak at this time? All right, seeing none, we'll go back to the board for any final questions or thoughts. Anyone? Okay. One thing, Mr. Hiller, I'm not sure if it was asked for before, but I did want to make a formal request about the capital replacement plan for the fire department. If we could have that in time for our quarterly meeting, that would be much appreciated. Thank you. All right, so we're done with the fire department budget for now. We'll move next to hydrant and water. Is that you guys as well?
Yes, yeah, we're under hydrant water.
Can you just walk us very briefly through the highlights?
I can tell you just what it is. We have
Aquarian, it is what it is, right?
1,500 and some hydrants. We call up the hydraulic company. This is what the cost is on the hydrants, and, so much a line, just like your water bill. So what you see in there, I know you have the page. What page is that?
186. Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Page
Yeah,
186 in the
187.
budget book.
And that we get right from the hydraulic company.
Right.
So the numbers you see, it's not ours. It's-
Understood. It's Aquarian, so we can go blame them.
Exactly.
All right. Any questions at this time from board members on this budget? All right. Seeing none, we'll go to the public. I'm sure you're waiting with bated breath on this one. Any questions or any comments, I'm sorry, for a hydrant and water budget? Seeing none, back to the board? I'm guessing not. Okay. All right, that one's done. Now, emergency management communications, I keep forgetting, is that you or police or?
Yeah, no, that's
Oh,
us. We're
okay.
the
Please,
emergency
We'll
manager.
start with emergency management. What
Right.
page are we on there here? guys?
Okay.
188, thank you.
Yeah, 180 on there. The emergency management, again, that is, we're told what we get from the
Right.
state. I'm the emergency manager, Art is the assistant emergency manager. You know, he does a lot of work on that with the emergency manager. But again, we just get the number, and this is what the state's giving us.
Right.
And, you know, we can't say we want more, we want less, or anything else. And if we do spend any money for that, we have to get the okay from them, and they don't always give us the okay, even with the money we have.
Right.
The communications, I know I had the deputy working on the communications. Maybe you want to add to that, Art?
Yeah, virtually the only operating money we have there is the communications, and I believe there's a line, there's $500 there for special department supplies, I believe. And that's, you know, that's just miscellaneous items, and the communications.
192, right.
We do use that communications money for, we partner with our communications from the fire department, which is basically our cell phone service.
Right.
And that's allowable under the state guidelines.
Okay. If I could just jump in on one quick question on the emergency management piece. I noticed in the budget summary, it says that the majority of this budget is reimbursed by state sources. Mr. Hiller, where in the budget does that show up? Is it state grants or something like that for revenue?
Other state grants.
Other state grants, thank you. All right, any board members have any questions on this budget, either the emergency management or emergency communications? Anyone? Mr. Walsh?
Why is the payroll line going up by 8.22%?
That's primarily, again, as a result, that payroll is one-third of the salary of the individual in the fire marshal's office. And as a member of the Town Hall Employees Association, it's a 2-year increase, and there's also a step in there.
So that's by the THEA contract, correct?
Yeah, it's contractual.
It's contractual, okay. And one question that came up, just as I read the description, is that the EOC is located at Fire Station 2 on Jennings Road?
Emergency Operations Center, yes.
Yeah.
What we're doing now, I worked along with the Chief McNamara in the police department, and we need more room. It's a real small room. And what we do is we're using the police department's conference room that's set up. They have the state-of-the-art equipment up there. So when we had this storm, the police, fire, and everybody, we went over there, set everything up, and it worked. We have the EOC room. In a small sense, we have to move out of there. It's a 10 by 10 room. But, you know, again, we have been using the police department for any large, like the Irene and so forth and so on. Over at our fire station, we have a room, but it's not as large as the police department, and it doesn't have the state-of-the-art equipment. And as I said, we work together with the police department pretty close, so when we have something big, it couldn't have been worked out better with our police department, and thanks to Chief McNamara and his staff. We set that thing up, and it was beautiful. We were in communications with everyone in the state, with the UI, just about everyone, right? And the Selectman was there. I couldn't have worked better. That was one of the best I've seen in my time, rather than a crammed room and everyone's on top of each other. So we've been using the police department as our big, large operation.
Well, Chief, thanks for anticipating my question, because I guess that was going to be my question, because I remember when I spoke to you that night, and you guys were all manning it at the police station, so I guess I was going to ask that question, but
Okay.
thanks for anticipating the question, you answered it, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thanks, Jim.
He's psychic as well as the fire chief. All right, any other questions from board members on these two budgets? Mr. Stone, yes, please.
I just want to compliment the fire department and the police department on, I thought they did a terrific job during all the problems that we had, especially with Hurricane Irene. I just want to thank you. I think I was proud to have you as our fire department and police department.
Well, thank you, Mr. Stone. That was very nice of you to say. We appreciate that. You know, we always hear the bad things, so we like to hear some of the good things once in a while.
I think we all echo Mr. Sohn's sentiments.
Thank you.
You find out what you really got when you're in times of crisis, and certainly we got the best. There's no question about that.
Yeah, we work together very well as a team, and including
All right,
this,
any
staff.
members of the board have any further questions? All right, we'll go to the public then. This is on the emergency management and the emergency communications budget. Does any member of the public have any comment to offer at this time? Seeing none, back to the board. Any final thoughts? Not specifically. I'm glad you brought that up.
There is a capital request under the ECC.
Yeah, please, Mr. DeWitt, you have a question on it?
No, I just want to make sure we.
Right, that's on page 194.
It's in-
We kind of
an
jumped,
emergency management.
yeah, we did kind of lump those together, so we should consider that now.
ECC
Oh, I'm
is
sorry.
normally under the
ECC's
police
over the
department.
So we're just doing emergency
police
management.
department.
Thank you for
Captain
clarifying.
Zabe.
Comes under
clarifying
there.
that. Yes.
We work with them on it, they work with us, but that's over there.
All right, so you guys are free to go.
Okay, well,
Thank
thank
you
you
very
very
much, gentlemen,
much.
for being here tonight, and thanks
You know,
for
if you
all
have
your
any
input.
questions, please pick up the phone, my door's open, and Chris, I'll have that, what you wanted, okay?
You certainly will.
Thank you very much.
All right, at this time, we'll do the ECC budget since we have Deputy Chief Ried here. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you?
Good evening.
Okay, we're on the ECC budget, which I thought we started before, but I'm glad that Ms. Gardner clarified that. So give us a brief synopsis and just identify yourselves for the record. We know who you are, but so everyone else does.
Good evening, Captain Zaben with the Fairfield Police Department. Just to give you a brief synopsis of the center, the Emergency Communications Center is located in the lower level of the police department. It's the nerve center of the police and fire and EMS services provided in the town of Fairfield. It's currently staffed by 12 telecommunicators that handle both 911 calls and non-emergency calls, and they rotate 24 hours a day, 3 shifts. The ECC handled over 41,000 calls for service in 2011 and approximately 200,000 routine calls. They're the backbone of the everyday response of public safety to the town, and they played a crucial role in the most recent storms by supporting both the police, the fire, and the public by answering not only phone calls, but the many questions that came about. The ECC depends on a current IT technology and uses computer-aided dispatch programming to communicate with the units in the field, as well as multiple frequency radio communications, which is supplemented by radio towers that are in and around Fairfield. I believe the budget before you represents both fiscal responsibility as well as supporting the essential function of the center. And we came in just at 3% over last year.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything further to offer by way of synopsis? Okay, in that case, we will throw it to the board. Mr. Walsh, please.
Good evening, gentlemen. Captain Zaben, what is the reason for the OT replacement going up by about 32 or 33%?
If we took all of what we are looking at last year, we were at, you see actuals 241. We were down about 4 dispatchers at the time, telecommunicators. We have now supplemented that by 3. We just had the sudden death of a telecommunicator, unfortunately, a few weeks ago. We're down to 12. And to replace not only the contractual leave, such as sick time, personal time, union leave, vacation, but also there's mandated training that is required for these telecommunicators to keep their accreditation. It does surpass the 121 line, and when you add it together, we need to be at 161. Unfortunately, with the loss of this last dispatcher, we have to replace his position every day with a replacement by another.
Now, when we replace this gentleman, I'm really sorry to hear about that loss. Do we have to hire someone new and then there's a whole training process for them, or do you normally go out and get somebody who's experienced, or how does that work?
We can, actually, the process right now is ongoing with Captain Smith, but we traditionally do hire new hires that need certification and accreditation, both state and within the town of Fairfield. Obviously, currently, we're replacing him with someone on their day off coming in, which is a cost. But there is a time of training. There's a 3-month time of riding double, if you will, or flying with someone next to them before they can go on their own. So it's a time-sensitive thing. I believe Captain Smith could speak to that. The applications are in process right now.
Thank you,
current-
Captain Smith.
We currently run a testing process to hire new dispatchers. The testing process in and of itself can take several months, receiving applications, running through testing, and then we do interview processes. So just to get through that could be a 3 to 4 or 5 month period. The training period can take up to maybe 6 months by the time we get them into classes that we have to send them to throughout the state. Then they go through a training program in-house where they've got to sit next to another dispatcher and perform up to a certain standard before we let them start working on their own. So complete start to end from the starting of a hiring process through could be 8 to 12 months to sometimes, depending on the available candidates. And it's all testing. Whoever wants to come in, even if their experience, has to go through the testing process. We don't pick one over another. It's all through the test.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Brockfeld.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lost my line here. The 161,542, if you were, or when you hire this new person to replace the vacancy, what will that number come down to?
Actually, I don't anticipate the number going down simply because during the time of training, we're still going to need to fulfill the 2 positions we were looking forward to, plus the loss of the last person that passed away.
Right.
I don't anticipate it is going to come down.
Let me ask the question a little differently.
Okay.
That makes sense. The fire department chief just was here speaking, and they have, obviously it's a smaller staff, that's probably part of the answer to the question. They have they've come up with a policy or a strategy that having a certain amount of vacancies is in the economic interests of the department and the town, right? It works for them to have X number of vacancies. So is it your opinion that you want to have all these spots filled, that in other words, you don't want to intentionally have vacancies?
I wouldn't intentionally want to have vacancies. I'd like to get at least 14 of the 15 potential spots filled. With 14 people on staff, we could have a minimum of 3 people in the room every shift, with midnights only having 2. We'd have a pretty good complement of people if we had 14.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brockfeld. Any further questions from board members? Anybody down here? Over here? Okay, nothing further then. I'll throw it to the public again, since I was a little confused about the fact that we got to this budget or not. Any comments from the public on the ECC budget? Seeing none, back to the board. Any final comments on ECC? Ms. McCarthy-Vehy, please.
Thank you. Just if you could remind me, Deputy Chief Ried, this one's for you. Thanks for coming back. The fire radio system, this one's
The narrow banding?
the narrow
Yes.
banding. This, if I'm not mistaken, this was something you requested in last year's budget.
That's correct.
Originally.
The narrow banding project is the FCC by December 31st, 2012 requires that we narrow band our system. Currently, right now, we work under a 25 megahertz spread, which would be some, in layman's terms, and I don't mean to belittle this because technology is not my favorite subject either, so this is how I understand it. This is the difference between having a Channel 6 vacant between Channel 5 and Channel 7 on the TV as we used to when we were younger. So what the TV industry has done is they've effectively narrow banded, so there's a channel, there's something on every channel now, and that's what we're being required to do because the FCC is running out of airspace. This is an absolute requirement by the end of this year, and the fines from the federal government will be very heavy if we don't do this, so we're mandated to do it.
So we need to spend this money, bottom line.
Bottom line is we need to spend this money, and that was, last year we deferred this because we knew that we didn't have to spend it till this year, but that was the caveat last year, was that we did have to spend this year and do this project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCarthy-Vehy. Mr. Walsh, yes, please.
Following up on our, we talked about this last year during the budget, right?
Correct.
Was it in the budget last year, or did we just talk that it was coming up?
No, the first selectman at the time requested it, that he did not propose it in the budget, and we agreed to that. We were okay with that for last year.
But you explained it to
But
us
we
that this would
explained
be
it. We
coming.
explained it to both the first selectman and the board. They said we had to do it this year.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Any further questions from board members? Mr. DeWitt.
Well, leads a good question. Are you going to replace all handheld radios? All radios in the trucks, or is this just a...
No, that's the second part, actually, the second capital request here is for the portable radios.
Yep.
Currently, we have been doing our mobile radios, which the radios that are mounted in the apparatus.
Right.
We have been replacing the XTL 1500 models for quite a few years now, and it's a dual band that works on both analog and digital.
Okay.
So we have that covered under our long-term replacement policy.
Right, okay.
The portables that we are asking for are digitally compatible, and they are just going to be command radios at this point now, because they're going to allow us to, I'm probably answering future questions here, but it's probably better we discuss this. This is going to be for the command staff only, and Engine 1 and Engine 2, which are our basic mutual aid rigs. They go to both Westport and Bridgeport. Currently, we have separate radios for Bridgeport, and Westport has to jump over to a different channel to speak to us.
Sure.
So.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Any further questions from board members? All right, so we're done with this budget. Gentlemen, thank you on the ECC. I guess you're out of here, Mr.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, on to police. Let's get our page here. 175 we're starting. Chief McNamara, good evening. Good evening, gentlemen.
Sure, just a, if you'd like me to begin.
Go right ahead, please.
Okay, just a little opening remarks. First of all, with me here to my right is Captain Zabin. He is responsible for the patrol division and oversees the patrol division. To my left is Deputy Chief Liddy, and to his left is Captain Smith. He oversees support services, which does a lot of the support functions. In 2011, and I know this crosses over fiscal years, but in 2011, we responded to over 41,000 calls for service, which was an increase of over 5,000 calls for service from 2010. And just to give you a sample of the kind of calls that our officers respond to, first of all, it makes us very proud to be up here representing the men and women of the Fairfield Police Department. But to give you a sample of those calls, there were more than 250 domestic-related cases, resulting in over 70 arrests with approximately 15 separate firearm seizure incidents, more than 100 requests from other departments within the region and state and federal for assistance, over 135 residential burglaries, over 35 commercial burglaries, over 345 thefts from motor vehicles, 75 thefts from homes, over 45 stolen cars, over 150 narcotics investigations, over 130 shopliftings, over 25 missing persons, and over 45 suicide-related calls, over 30 identity theft, 25 internet fraud, over 50 cases of illegal credit card, financial crimes, stolen bikes, over 10 robberies, over 140 harassment cases, over 175 vandalism calls, and 10 arsons. In addition to that, as part of our continued effort to reduce accidents and ensure traffic safety, we've initiated over 9,000 traffic stops with over 4,000 infractions issued for a variety of motor vehicle laws, and we also continue our efforts at traffic safety education and awareness. In addition, we are maintaining a strong presence within our school system. We have a strong commitment to community outreach and our commitment to finding more efficient ways to provide service to this town. This budget basically is a 0% increase from last year. It represents our strategic plan for the upcoming year, and we certainly remain confident that we can continue our high level of service to the Fairfield community in these obviously stressed economic times. But that kind of just gives you an overview of what the last year presented us with.
So 0.06% increase. Good night, gentlemen. Thanks.
Decrease.
A decrease,
Yes,
actually.
that's what I meant to say, yes. I know, I can't, hard to say the word, really. All right, at this time, we'll throw it open to board members. Any questions, comments, concerns on the police budget? Ms. McCarthy-Vahey.
Thank you, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here. It's really helpful to hear those numbers and to hear what actually goes on in the department and the kind of work that you do. So I appreciate you sharing that perspective. Really helpful. I actually wondered if, I have a couple questions, some specific, and I'll defer and wait for others. Just this one of my favorite lines, the crossing guards. And wondering, in terms of this one going down just a slight bit, why the decrease? Are we decreasing the number of crossing guards? And how many crossing guards do we have?
Take it. 16. So I got to get to that line item. We have 15 guards. The number is down a 0.5%. No, that doesn't, whether or not the numbers were miscalculated in the past by a point of percentage or whatever. That actually represents the accurate numbers times the days that they work. So we're not decreasing any of the guards. It's just presenting the numbers specifically line by line.
Okay. Another question, this one about overtime earnings, and just looking at, I was looking earlier today at the numbers for this year so far, and wondering, again, as I asked with the last budget, if that number for next year is going to be an accurate number, given how things are going this year already.
Yeah, overtime for us over the last several years have been difficult to nail down. The last several years, we've seen a large number of vacancies. Several years ago, there was a large number of vacancies in the upper ranks, and now we're just coming to the end of the large number of vacancies in the lower ranks. In other words, patrol officers out on the road. We currently still are carrying 3 vacancies. So whether or not that number will accurately reflect, if you look back the last couple of years, our overtime budget lines have gone over what has been budgeted for. We've made up that difference at the end of the year with other lines that have come in under budget. So to say that that's going to be an accurate number, I mean, we're shooting for that number, but I think our overtime really we need a hard look at our overtime, because I think that in some levels that number should be funded more than it is right now, just based upon the historic nature of those accounts.
Just one other follow-up to that.
Sure.
In terms of the fire department, talking about vacancies, that the cost-effective, where's the line in terms of hiring, not hiring? Are the vacancies that you have now, is that cost-effective, or is that just the nature of the economic situation that we're in, and
Yeah, it's
not
not,
wanting to add people?
with our situation, overtime's not dollar for dollar. In other words, if you were to say hire those 3 vacancies, I don't know dollar for dollar whether or not those overtime lines will go down. We staff a patrol division with a certain number of officers. Now, if those officers take personal days, are sick, or in training, we have to fill those vacancies. In addition to that, our resources are expanded beyond patrol. We have officers dedicated to the schools and other areas, other task force, and they're involved in some other things. So it's not dollar for dollar. So we don't really look at it whether or not holding those vacancies is more economic. I mean, clearly with the benefits that might be paid off, it might be economically sound, but it's not dollar for dollar in those accounts, if I'm making any sense.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ms. McCarthy-Vehy. Mr. Walsh, please.
Chief, I'm going to ask you about an area I've not asked questions about before, your revenue numbers, because this came up when we talked to the first selectman about some of the revenue projections, and if I direct you to page 18 of the budget, under about halfway down the page on page 18, it says police, it's line 42202, that's the object number, police surcharge on motor vehicle violations. And the number there for revenues going from 50,000 to 80,000, which was it's a 60% increase. When I asked the first selectman, he thought enforcement was going to be going up, basically. But he asked me to talk to you about it, so I'm asking you about it. Is there enforcement going up 60% more tickets do you expect for this year, or can you explain that line item? Oh, did Paul? I'm sorry. Maybe the first selectman didn't say it. I think the fiscal officer, now that I've been reminded, said that. So,
I'll address that.
Thank you, Mr. Hiller.
sorry, Mr. First.
This is a line, first off, this is a fee that we received from the state, which is relatively new. It's only, I'd say, roughly 3 years old since we started to receive this from.
Mr. Hiller, did we discuss this when we did the revenue discussion? We
discussed it briefly, yeah.
Okay, did you want to expound on it, or?
I'm sorry?
Did you want to expound on it, or
I'll
did we
expand on
cover
it
it?
a little bit.
Okay.
And I think one of the things is we've noticed, for example, we've already received year-to-date slightly in excess of 75,000, and we will receive one more check during this year. So clearly, we're going to significantly exceed our revenue estimate of this year, and that's why we upped that. A lot of it is directly, and I know Chief McNamara and I have had conversations and some email dialogue on this, that it is a result of increased enforcement.
Yeah, we look at traffic safety as a combination of not only enforcement, it's education, and certainly we work with engineering to make the roads safer. So it's not all about dollars, but certainly when it comes to our more focused approach to traffic safety, with that comes a more focused approach, and part of that is the enforcement. And we have seen that our levels of enforcement have gone up as part of an overall plan to make the town safer and to reduce the accident rate.
Do you, in regards to motor vehicle tickets, do you have any type of statistics you can give us in regards to the number last year versus the number this year, or some reason for the increase? Because it seems to be a pretty significant increase.
Probably, I believe in October it was of this past year, we reassigned some resources to devote more energy towards traffic enforcement, and they have obviously been quite successful in the job that they've been doing.
Mr. Tetro, you had something on this point?
Yes, just to clarify, I think that one of the things that Mr. Hiller did is go back and look at what the actuals are running at. So while this may be a significant increase over last year's budget, it's not a significant increase over the current run rate in terms of where we are. So the idea is to make this very realistic based on what the current year experience is. So I think the question to the chief might better be, are you anticipating comparable conditions and comparable incidences next year as you're currently experiencing in this fiscal year?
Well, I'd like to say no. I'd like to say that everybody's going to comply with the traffic laws, but
Of course.
That's a double-edged sword.
Naturally.
Yeah. But given the history, I would anticipate that we're going to maintain our level of enforcement along with education and engineering projects.
All right. And last year you purchased some scanners for some of the cars. How effective have they been this year, and have they increased your enforcement abilities?
Yes, we currently have 2 fully operational license plate readers. We found them to be very effective. We are scanning an average of about 7,000 or 8,000 plates each week. And it's been successful with a number of motor vehicle violations, including unregistered cars, wanted people, things of that nature. We're still waiting for the big felony arrest from them, but they've been very successful.
Great. Thank you.
Anything further?
Yes.
Please. Well, let me just check. Any board members want to chime in at this point? I don't want to
May I have
miss anybody.
a revenue follow-up before we go back?
Sure.
to-
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ms. McCarthy.
Since Selectman Walsh and I are along the same lines in terms of looking back at the revenues, and that was one of the questions I had. Thank you for asking that. In terms of the parking violation fees, I wanted to ask about that number. This is projected to go down a bit, 6.67%. I'm wondering if you can talk about the status of any work with the parking authority in the hopes that perhaps those numbers might improve a bit, and what the timing on that might be.
Which line item are you on? I know where you're at,
And,
but
Page 22, my
22.
apologies, and it's 42,201 under fines, the police parking violation fees.
okay. So right in the middle of the page, directly under the subheading fines, police parking violation fees.
Yeah, I don't have the exact number where we're at right now, but I do know that we checked today, and we're actually $43,000 over where we were last year at this time. Is that correct, Chris?
Exactly.
So our revenue at this time last year is up as opposed to down. So although it's budgeted for a decrease, this year anyway, we're seeing an increase where we would have been last year.
And the reason is the same. We reallocated some resources to our traffic safety unit, and they are doing a combined effort of traffic safety and parking.
If I could just address that, Ms. McCarthy-Vahey, I think really if you look at the estimate, and I emphasize the word estimate, and it's in keeping with what the first selectman just said on the previous one, is really consistent with what the previous 3 years have been on actual. We've only hit $280,000 last year, and the prior 2 years were we're below that by some $10,000 or $12,000. And so I think we're really just trying to see what the experience would be. You know, if the current experiences we may see over the next month increases, there may be reason to modestly increase that line.
The other part of my question was just in terms of working with the parking authority to more efficiently and effectively collect those funds. What's your thought about that? And
Yeah, we're currently looking at some options with regards to modernizing our processes for handling the way we process tickets. That's still in the working phase. Obviously, there may be some expense up front or a fee that associated with that, so we're trying to work that into our system. But one of our ways to become more efficient would be to look at the way we handle our parking processes and try to make them more efficient and make them more keeping up with new technology. So we are looking at that. We're not in a position right now to budget for that nor to change, but we are certainly looking at that, actively looking at that.
okay. Well, I guess I'll just put in a word of encouragement. Hopefully, we can move that process forward.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McCarthy-Vahey. Any other board members have questions or comments at this time? Mr. Walsh?
Yeah. Chief, the alarm ordinance numbers keep coming down. Is that just because people keep getting more used to that the ordinance is there and that they're better in trying to make sure that it doesn't get to the point where there are companies calling up? Or is, I mean, they've dropped in half within a couple of years.
Yeah, no, we haven't changed anything with regards to the way we're operating that program. So if it's coming down, if the projection's coming down, it's just based upon less fines because people are more compliant.
Okay. And back to your expense lines, under the work attendance bonus, once again, just like on fire, that number seems to be drastically coming down, in your case about 40%. Is that a contractual item?
Is it
Not in comparison to the fire department. We haven't settled our contract. That is simply historical. We found that less employees are taking advantage of the incentive of work incentive bonus.
Mr. Tetra?
Sheriff, I might. Ms. Gardner, can you address that? Because I think that's something that's going to ripple through every department we talk to.
Right, I'd like to address that because I actually made the estimates for every department's work attendance bonus.
Okay.
And the work attendance bonus for some bargaining units was suspended when we were trying to maximize our, or hold back expenses
Right.
in bad economic times. But what I did is I took the current half year of information that we have, for which we have been paying work attendance bonuses, and simply doubled it.
Okay.
To get a full year forecast for each and every budget, so that it's based on actual experience, the most current actual experience we have.
Right. Now, obviously, it comes into play with police and with other bargaining units as well, that the contracts are still open, and obviously we don't know exactly what those numbers are going to be, but you plugged in those numbers based upon taking the half a year and doubling it for those departments, correct?
Right. But as I mentioned before, fire contract that was disbanded. that
Right. Well, that's
benefit.
been
So
that's
that
been
will-
finalized.
So we'll zero that out.
Right. Okay. So obviously, as those come down and those contracts get settled, we're going to need updated information, perhaps at the quarterly meeting or whenever we get there. Okay.
Okay.
Anything further, Mr. Walsh?
Yes. Chief, first, overall, I mean, great job with your budget and keeping it where it was. The only one item I saw that's standing out, it's not even that much, is rental and storage. Is there more rental and storage requirements that you have at this point in time?
We've, over the last several years, the way we fingerprint individuals is now all done through technology. And the system that we use, we have 2 fingerprint machines, and the system we utilize is called the Cogent machines. And if you recall, over the last several years, we've had discussion and been in discussion with regards to how we're paying for that. Initially, we were fortunate enough to use asset forfeiture funds to pay for that. And over the last several years, we've had dialogue to say that we can't continue to have a ongoing expense come out of a fund that's really not guaranteed and certainly can't handle it. So we've talked about rolling it into an actual line, and so we felt rental and storage would be that line, and that's why you have the increase.
Okay. So does that mean that if we do get asset and forfeiture money, it's used for other things in the department?
Yeah, certainly. And those asset forfeiture funds would be utilized according to any other expenditures and the procedures to spend it.
Great. In regards to the capital request, can you just take us through the car replacement program, whether this is a normal amount of cars to be replaced as opposed to previous years, and just kind of give us a summary?
Sure. Over probably the last 20 years, we've always come in and asked for 12 cars as part of the vehicle replacement program. And I don't have the form in front of me, but I know maybe 2 years ago, over the last 2 years, we've handed out a form that detailed why we felt that was most effective. This is a different year, just to reiterate the fact that we thought last year was the last year we were going to be able to obtain Crown Vics. The budget was approved. We were fortunate enough that we got one more year out of the Crown Vics, brand new, but a year 2011s rather than 2012. So this year, hands down, we cannot purchase any more Crown Vics. And as such, we're still making a determination as to what type of vehicle we're going to change to. Chief Fellner kind of touched on the fact that there are several other manufacturers making police vehicles. We currently have one Chevy Caprice that we're testing to see whether or not that will fit our needs, and the decision will be made on which vehicle we go for. As a result of that, it's kind of irresponsible to come in and say we're going to have 12 vehicles this year, given the added expense of not only the vehicle, but all the police models are downsizing. So basically all of the equipment that we utilize for the Crown Vics will not be able to be allocated for the new vehicles. There may be some that we can use, but certainly the large expenses of a cage and probably the light bars we won't be able to utilize. So that gets the initial cost for each vehicle up. So to come in here and ask for 12 vehicles while trying to be responsible isn't really an adequate thing to do. Excuse me. So what we're looking for is, we really call this a transitional year. We're going to allocate for 10 vehicles, kind of figure out how we'll go from there, keeping the Crown Vics. Keep in mind, we still have a fleet of Crown Vics. There will be parts for the Crown Vics. We have a stock room full of Crown Vic parts, but now we're going to transition into the new vehicle. So that's why we're down to 10 vehicles as opposed to up to the 12 vehicles.
And there's no restocking of the new vehicles. You haven't chosen what vehicle that's going to be for new parts, is there?
Yeah, we're leaning towards the Chevy Caprice, only because that's one of the higher rated ones. But besides rating, there's also officer adaptability to the vehicle. So we have one now. We're getting mixed reviews from our officers, and that really does matter. They do spend, 8 hours a day in the vehicle, so we have to certainly take into account officer comfort, the ability to get to their weapons and to get to equipment. So we're still analyzing the effect of that. And talking to our neighbors, talking to the state police to determine which vehicle is adequately going to fulfill the needs of not only our department, but we'll utilize their opinion to find out which one we're going to go to. The final decision has not been made. However, I will tell you that the numbers in there are based on Chevy, our best estimate for the Chevy Caprice, because at the time we developed them, that was the vehicle that we were leaning towards. But that may change given the more research that we do.
Based on this being kind of a transitional year, next year, once you've made the decision on what car to go to, are we going to be anticipating to have a higher note, like an extra 2 cars added on next year to try to catch up?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, each year that we've come in with 12, generally we've probably been cut back to 11 or to 10. Hard to say. I don't anticipate next year us coming and asking for 14. I think we'd probably go back towards our 12, but we'd have to reassess at that time.
Okay, and once we make a decision about what car we're going to use, do you have to stock up in that first year on spare parts, like more than you would normally? Or is that something that's just those parts, because the cars are new, you start just building up an inventory over time? And we're not expected to have a lot of spare parts the first year or so.
Yeah, I mean, the oil filters will be different, so there'll be an expense, but I think that can be rolled into the general line item from our mechanics, our automotive line item. Windshield wipers and the general maintenance of equipment that you need on a daily or weekly basis. But the large expenses will probably just be built up over time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr.
Walsh.
Polito.
Mr. Brockveld, please. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks. Actually, just a non-budget necessarily question, just quickly. You mentioned the scanners, the license plate scanners. We have 2 of them. You said we scanned 7,000 to 8,000 license plates a week?
Correct, yes.
Is that just random scanning of license plates?
Yes, they're hard-mounted to two marked patrol cars, and everywhere the car goes, it scans the license plate and cross-references it against a database of wanted people, people whose registrations have been suspended for whatever reason, sex offender registries, things of that nature.
And what happens to the information as it's scanned in and automatically checked against some database?
That information, including a photograph of the car, is stored on the car and then becomes part of a combined database currently in Hartford.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
And also, if you're a Board of Finance member who voted to cut their budget, then you're on that list, too. But- All right, Mr. Brown, sorry, I missed you down there. Your
Okay,
turn.
Thank you. Good evening. Hey, guys. Just as I look down your, the line items here, other than payroll, looks like your largest expense is fuel. And so just a couple quick questions on the fuel. The miles per gallon on the VIX, Ford Victorias, what is that, you know? The miles you get per gallon?
Yeah, I don't, maybe 14.
14. The
Yeah.
Caprice will be different?
I don't know whether it would be much different. You know, it's really difficult when you talk miles per gallon because it's stop and go and oftentimes maybe stop for a period of time when it's running. So it's hard to say miles per gallon. I don't anticipate it to be much different.
Okay. So, I'm just, you know what, I guess I'm a little surprised that fuel's only going to go, you're anticipating just $10,000. Do you determine that, or do you kind of get that
No,
number?
what we do is we estimate the number of gallons that we're going to utilize, and we go through a historical venture into that, and then we deal with purchasing to find out what they anticipate the cost per gallon will be. So we just basically take the number of miles that we believe the vehicles will be on, and then we multiply it by the gallons that they give us the price on.
So how many miles do these cars go a year?
Total, I think we estimate about 108,000 miles that we get the vehicles going.
Per unit? I'm sorry,
Per fleet? I don't know how many per fleet. Per vehicle?
Per vehicle per year?
I mean, they're running, some of these.
Probably about 40,000, 35, 40,000.
40,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
45 per year? I'm sorry.
Per year, per car, yeah.
Okay.
Again, you remember, that's our first line. Now we have, then they become the second line vehicle.
Okay.
24 hours a day,
And then each car lasts about how many years?
about 5 years. By the time they trickle out of the system, about 5 years. And then some of them, oftentimes, depending upon their condition, will, as Chief Fellner mentioned, will offer them up to other departments in town, and if not, we'll go through purchasing, and they'll be purchased at auction.
So some department in town gets a car with 200,000 miles on it?
Well,
Maybe,
you know,
right, I mean,
not that much, because as they go offline from primary vehicle to a secondary line, they don't get as many miles on it. Those, you know, after the second year or third year, they're kind of trickling out of the system of the primary units that are going 8 hours, 24 hours a day. So the mileage will go down, but their use will also go down until they're out of the system.
Okay. All right, thanks. I was just surprised that it's a nice surprise, but that your fuel costs would only go up 10,
Yeah,
just
and
with the price of fuel.
I think one of the things, I just made a note for Mrs. Gardner, these are numbers that were basically brought forward by purchasing, based on the usage, and they're really November numbers. And I think we've got to, I think we all know personally what's happened at the pump over the last 60 days. And I think we've got to revisit this number in the coming weeks, or at least look at where we are. We had been buying contracts on diesel fuel and previously on gasoline. We stopped that. Right now, we're buying off the rack. And we have an inventory of diesel fuel. We do not have an inventory of gasoline that we own. And I think we're going to have to look at what our pricing is related to the budget.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. DeWitt had a follow-up on Mr. Brown's and then Mr. Kiley.
Yeah, and just as fuel and lubricants total, last year, we asked Mrs. We had the same discussion last year, and it was crazy. Police went up 28%, fire went up 5%, DPW went down. This year, fire's going up 17%. I don't know if that's diesel. Diesel's going up more than regular fuel. I don't think it is. You're going up 3, and DPW is going up 2.4. So, maybe we need to warn our
Yeah, I
purchasing
think when-
lead
when-
that we're
when,
gonna, I'm gonna ask about that, because I asked about it last year and didn't get any
Yeah, I think
satisfaction.
Ms.
so.
Holland will be here. I forget which day she's scheduled in next week, but I think we can prep her on that and
All right.
have some
So you should
answers.
just be giving us 108,000 miles, 14 miles a gallon, and then have a nice day. We give you a number, right? Because you're going to burn the gas you're going to burn, right?
Yeah, we had that discussion last year, and I believe, just to recall, I think this board cut our fuel by a certain number also.
I
So,
believe
yeah.
that's true, right? Because it went up, it literally was 28%. So
Yes.
we questioned why it was so much
Right,
last year,
yeah.
so.
Based upon the numbers that we just get, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's going to, and it's funny because Chief Fellner made a statement today. He says, we just fill the tank. When we fill the tank with diesel, I mean, you don't go to Sunoco and get a gas, right? You get it from a centralized.
Oh, yeah, no, we have gas delivery at headquarters, so our vehicles are filled there.
So we should be able to control that.
Yeah, and we're conscious of it. We have the mechanic monitors that, so it's not, we know that it's not an unlimited pump, that there's money that is
Sure.
fueling our vehicles. We understand that.
Great. Yes, we'll bring it up with Ms. Holland.
On this point, Mr. Tetreault? Thank you. Go ahead.
Just to Mr. DeWitt's point, comparing police and fire kind of makes sense, because I think the vehicle and usage is probably stable from year to year. So so that should be a price point per gallon that drives most of that change. Ms. Gardner, we moved some things from DPW. Did we move any of their fuel consumption from DPW out? I know we moved some automotive repairs.
There's a new line
and
item
some-
under DPW administration for $500 in fuel. I was going to ask when we got there.
No, that's not what I was talking about. Did we move any fuel consumption out of DPW? Okay, all right, sorry, we'd made some budget rebalancing to try and get things to other departments, and I just wanted to make sure fuel wasn't one of those. So
Okay. Mr. Kiley, you had a follow-up as well?
I did, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. It's great to see you. Quick question on cars. I know we've talked about this briefly in the past, but my recollection is that, you need diesel, gasoline-powered cars to have the kind of car you need to do your job. Whether it's Chevy or Ford or Dodge, are we getting closer to there being any alternative fuel-type cars that are suitable for police work, or is that still a dream?
No, we're looking at it. We're actually looking at some of the electric cars to get samples to see how they would work, and some of the hybrid vehicles that some of the federal agencies are moving towards. We're not there yet, but we're certainly looking at alternatives to the the gasoline-powered vehicles. But certainly for the everyday use, it might be different, but, when the bell rings, you need to be moving pretty quick, and you need to get there fairly efficiently, and safety becomes an issue with it. These vehicles are tested for pursuits, for handling, and some of the hybrid vehicles that the public can buy are not rated for law enforcement work. So you jeopardize safety, officer safety, and frankly, public safety when you start to go to some of these hybrids that really are not meant for law enforcement work. And so that's kind of always been the sticky point for us, is to try to move towards that direction.
Right, they're lacking in speed and in strength and in power.
And testing. These vehicles, the Ford Crown Vic, the Chevys, the Dodge, and the new Ford that's coming out are all law enforcement tested. Michigan, the state of Michigan does a lot of tests on them, and I'm sure others do also, but they're all rated law enforcement performance. Initially, years ago, when the Crown Vic came out, they had problems with rear-end collisions where they would explode. Officers were tragically being killed in motor vehicle accidents, even low-end motor vehicle accidents, because of the design of the vehicle. Those are all tested and retooled, so some of these hybrid vehicles that the public can buy are not yet rated for even the simple driving that law enforcement does, and we're reluctant to put our officers in.
No, I certainly.
No, and I know you understand that.
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
kind of been the point for us, is that it sounds good, but yet to get to that level, we're not there yet. I don't think that
They're just not suitable yet.
Not yet.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Mr. Mrs. McCarthy-Vehy, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two questions. One, postage, not a big item, line item. However, you seem to have gone down, which is great. How did you manage that? And can we learn from that in other departments? What's driving that decrease?
I mean, it's just historical. I think, we're all using less postage. And that's really what it is. It's a historical look at that line item to say we're not really reaching that level anymore. So we cut it down to a more realistic number.
Is it more of a use of electronic communication?
It is, and, even the simple things is, the police commission, in fact, I neglected to say, but obviously it goes without saying that having the support of the police commission every day in our department is powerful. Commissioner Peterson, Commissioner and Chairman Tom Dubrowski, and Commissioner Hirsch are all here in the audience, and I just wanted to mention that. But even the packets that they get, we no longer mail them out. We get them to them in other fashions. So
Wonderful.
we're looking at
That
electronics plays a lot into it, though,
And
obviously.
that leads to my second question, if I may, Mr. Chair. In terms of IT, last year you requested an IT position as a civilian. I'm wondering if you're continuing to have IT handled by a uniformed officer and how that's working and out for the department. Is that?
Well, I can tell you that we have not relied any less on IT. If anything, we continue to rely, as everyone does, more regularly on IT. Last year, we did request and thought that it would be appropriate to request an IT position to gradually get our officer, who is a police officer trained and also IT trained, out of that role. I think that it may be rolled into an IT request or handled elsewhere.
Mr. Tatro?
I just wanted to mention, as the chief was saying, that's kind of part of an ongoing discussion. We're looking at that on a continuous basis. We met with fire and police and IT just recently and kind of talked through what would be involved in that, what the costs would be, and are exploring when the best time for that to possibly implement that might be. But it's not part of the recommendation in this year.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Tetro.
May I make a follow-up comment?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, postage, again, it's not a huge savings, but absolutely IT is something that we're relying on more and more. So I thank you for the movement that you're making in that direction and the support and savings.
Yeah, and just some other things that the we are managing our IT program. We've recently, again, all ways to try and be more efficient. We've recently paired with the fire department for a computerized software program for scheduling, which is allowing us to do a little more efficient way of handling some of our scheduling. So our IT program is continuing to move forward in a beneficial way.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Walsh, I saw your hand up.
Chief, I'm not sure if you're the best one to handle this or the fiscal officer. In regard to that fuel account, I know it was knocked down last year from your request. Where do we stand year to date? Are we on track to hit the number that we budgeted for?
Yeah, Mr. Muniz.
I'm not getting paper anymore.
I have it electronically over here.
Mr. Hill, you need a moment on that because I can move it on to another question, or if you have it.
I didn't bring my electronics.
Come back. Okay, we'll come back to it. Do you have another question, or waiting on that?
That's it.
Okay. Board members have any further questions at this time?
We've spent, there's an encumbrance outstanding, which is probably for a delivery of close to $14,000, which means we spent almost 85% of the budget year-to-date on that line.
So is that looking like we're going to go over on that budget line?
I would think so.
You think so? And that's buying it at current market rates too, correct?
Yeah, and the price hasn't gone down.
Yeah.
Like-
But you don't know that, right? Purchasing could have made a deal to buy 200,000 gallons.
No, we do not own any gasoline. We own diesel fuel, but we don't own any gasoline other than what's in the ground right now.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions from board members at this time? All right, then we're going to throw it open to the public. Any members of the public have a comment? Again, keep it brief. Comments, not questions. And I'm trying to find a mic for you. We could just use the one up here with the chiefs. Mr. Hurley, please come up. Just identify yourself and...
Thank you. Michael Hurley, RTM District 1. Just a quick comment. The Public Health and Safety Committee took a tour of the police department. It was a real detailed tour lasting about 3 hours or so, and we all got sort of a much more detailed understanding, I think, of the police department, of its leadership, of the condition of its equipment, from the cars to the garage, to the computers in the cars, to the communications equipment. I think we had 9 members attend. It was so successful that we moved on and we did a full tour by the entire RTM, and I think we had about 24 members attend for the same tour of all the facilities and such. And I would just say, I think it's a really invaluable, opportunity for members of town government to go on these tours. We also did one with the fire department, which was also very valuable. So in terms of, trying to understand some of these questions that have been asked about the cars and the computers and such, I would just encourage both of these bodies, both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, and it's not a question, it's more just a comment, to, consider going on sort of a comparable tour. I think you all would be beyond, in addition to being incredibly impressed by the caliber of the individuals, I think it would be very eye-opening to see some of this equipment and the facilities firsthand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Your point's well taken. I know that many members of this board have over the years taken tours and done the fire training, and it is an invaluable experience, certainly, to kind of get a hands-on view of what's going on with those departments, so you kind of know what you're voting on. So, point well taken. Yes, please, sir. Come on up. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening. My name is Tom Dabrowski. I am the current chair of the police department. It's a privilege to stand behind these young men, these young professionals here. A couple things that we like to say about them is, first of all, they are very energetic and very professional. And as the board member and speaking on behalf of the board, we're very proud of what they've done for the department as well. One of the things that you can't measure, it's not in the budget, is the morale of the police department. Because of their professionalism, because of their leadership, I have never seen the morale at the police department as high. So I'm encouraging not only to respect what they've done but, and pass the budget, but remember that in their leadership, the morale of the department is a key part of keeping this town safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. And I might add their snappy dresses, too. You didn't even have your uniforms on. You all got matching shirts on.
I know. We had another meeting to go to earlier today.
All right. Any other members of the public have a comment? All right. Seeing none, we'll go back to the board for final round here. Anyone have any final questions, comments, concerns for the police budget?
I will slow down.
Good idea, Bob. All right. We are at a little bit after 9 o'clock. I do want to get animal control in, and then we will take a 10-minute recess and then finish up with health and welfare, if that's all right with the rest of the board. Okay? Yep. All right. Yep. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. On to animal control. Good evening. How are you tonight?
Good.
And again, we know who you are. If you could just identify yourselves for the record for everybody else.
Sure. Paul Miller, Animal Control Officer.
Great. Thank you. Will you just give us a brief synopsis of what's going on with your budget, and then we'll turn it over to questions. Thank you.
Sure. In the actual acting budget, there's only one item that's been raised that's under my control. If you turn to line item 54330, it's automotive and maintenance and repair materials for a van.
That's on page 182 for everybody. All right, thank you.
And we requested to raise that $1,000 for expected parts and expenses for that vehicle. The vehicle currently has about 83,000 miles, expected next year to have about 95.
Okay. Is that the van that we see going around town, or is that another vehicle?
We have two vehicles.
Okay. Great.
They look similar, so.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to point out, or should we just go right to questions?
No, no capital, no.
Okay. Makes that easy. All right, at this point, we'll go to board members for questions, comments, concerns on the animal control budget. Anyone? Going once. Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Utilization of your facility down on One Rod Highway, you've been seeing increases in the last year, decreases, pretty much the same amount of activity with the amount of dogs, cats, other animals coming into the facility?
It seems we're finding more animals that are abandoned due to financial reasons. The animals that we are picking up seem to be in worse physical shape than before. We're getting animals that are sick where the owners couldn't afford to treat them, and we're forced to treat those problems. We have a good working relationship with our veterinarian, and we keep costs at a minimum. So as you notice, we did not raise that line item this year.
Right.
Maybe not more animals, but the animals that we are getting seem to be in worse shape.
So despite that stress, though, it's not causing increased costs?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Anyone else have a question? All right, seeing none, we will go to the public on this budget. Any comment on the animal control budget from the public? Seeing none, we'll go back to the board. Final Jeopardy? All right, gentlemen, I'm sorry, Chief McNamara.
Just make one comment here. Often overlooked, we've all heard and talked about the hurricane and the events surrounding the hurricane. Something that's really not oftentimes mentioned or really thought about was Paul and his staff and his ability to man or have officers staff a shelter or an offshoot of our shelter at Ludlow for pets. And it was really very successful during the hurricane that people were able to come with their pets to Ludlow, and kind of a model for the state. So I just wanted to point out the fact that Paul and his staff are certainly doing a great job at not only working today, but also preparing for tomorrow and what tomorrow might bring. So I just wanted to commend Paul and his staff for doing that.
Certainly, couldn't agree more with that. It's an essential part of a town when you have so many people with pets. Obviously you need someone kind of looking out for when things go wrong, and certainly we commend you on the service you provide to the town, so thank you. All right, Mr. Tetro, yes.
Just to build on that, more than one person in the shelter, as we toured it, mentioned that they wouldn't be in the shelter if it didn't have room for their pets.
Yeah.
One gentleman, it was even the reverse. He said the only reason he came was to have a place for his pets, otherwise he would have stayed home.
Really? Wow.
So tremendous compliment in
amazing.
terms of what they're doing.
And I do know that Commissioner Peterson has a big involvement in the CERT program. Yes. And one of our officers, Officer ACO Pinato, also has a big involvement in that. So they both were excellent.
Thank you. Kudos to them as well.
Thanks.
All right, any further comment from the board? Seeing none, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate the time. All right, at this time, we're at 10 after 9. We're going to break for a 10-minute recess. We will meet back here at 20 after 9 sharp. All right, recess. Would all Board of Finance members report to the front. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's wrap this baby up here tonight. We got health and welfare. We'll start off with the health department. Mr. Cleary, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening. How are you tonight?
I'm doing just fine.
You want everything, don't you? 219.
219.
The big tab that says
Please proceed.
Sure. Essentially, the increase in our budget is solely related to contractual obligations related to our 7 employees that are in the THEA union. Other than that, the 16 or so line items that are within my control, actually there are some changes in there, and it's similar to what I did last year in terms of rearranging based on usage in certain line items, rearranging that and reallocating that to things like we're seeing an increase in overtime costs related to farmers markets and temporary event increases. And so I've essentially, while we're still under about $1,800 from last year's budget in those 16 line items, it's any increase is offset with a decrease. We decreased our budget about $6,000 and increased in other line items about $4,200.
Anything further you want to add, or just to throw it out to questions right now?
We can go to questions if you like.
At this point, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Tetro, please.
Yeah, I just want to take a moment to point out, since Sands brought it up, he did a very good job of what I'll call rebalancing, looking at budgets, looking at where we could use those dollars, where they can be spent to make sure that we're more effective. So when you think of, when you're looking for creativity in your management team in terms of prioritizing correctly, moving money where it's most effective, not asking for an increase if they didn't need it, I think Sands is a great example of that. You'll see that in other departments too, but I just wanted to give Sands a compliment there and make sure he was appropriately recognized for that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tetro. Amen to that. All right, any other board members have any comments, questions, concerns at this time? Mrs. McCarthy-Vahey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Mr. Cleary as well for the questions that you answered for me earlier via email, which were very helpful. Just related to communications and cell phones, just wondering from a town-wide perspective, is your cell phone usage and contracts, is that done all through purchasing together? How do you handle that?
Well, essentially, before purchasing got involved, we had obtained cell phones a number of years ago, and we're still under those same contracts. Back when police fire were on Sprint and Nextel, back when it was Nextel, we obtained Nextel phones when our emergency preparedness funds came around, and we've maintained those contracts and such. We get a very good rate on those contracts, so we've simply maintained those. And so, you know, most of the town has switched over to Verizon. We're still on Sprint Nextel because, and we've talked to purchasing about it, Verizon can't beat the rates that we currently have, so we're staying with them.
And you really answered my question. I guess the question is, can you beat the rates elsewhere, and are you working with purchasing? And the answer is yes to both of those, or no and yes. Thank you. Just another question in terms of your write-up and the public health nurses administer PPDs. Being a layperson, what is PPD?
It's a tuberculin skin test. You know, so for example, when there's a case of tuberculosis or a potential exposure, we do a series of tests on people that were contacts around them to determine if they've converted and to see if they're reacting positively. So our nurses will do those on various staff for the town, and as well as contacts of individuals with suspected tuberculosis.
And I have one more, if
Sure.
I may. In terms of our nurses, some of our nurses are obviously in the public schools, so I assume that they're working just during the school calendar. Are there some nurses, and I assume that there are, who are on a 12-month cycle, and what's the breakdown?
We have a total of 33 nurses that work for our staff. 3 of those nurses are 12-month full-time nurses, that 2 coordinators and our nursing supervisor, and our public health nurse. We have 1 part-time public health nurse that's also 12 months part-time. All the other nurses are 10 months, and there's a breakdown in the budget book of so many are full-time, and then there's some part-times in there as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McCarthy-Vahey. Mr. Walsh.
Sands, I'll follow the First Selectman's compliments on the budget. You did a great job with it.
Thank you.
Just one question in regards to the overtime. What are those overtime earnings for in a department like yours?
The overtime, the cost for us, essentially, we get called out on fires and floods and events at licensed facilities. You know, so we have 410 licensed facilities in town: restaurants, grocery stores, nursing homes, all those types of facilities that we have licenses. Anytime there's an event where there's a question about some aspect of it that fire doesn't feel comfortable making the decision, they call us and we'll go out. In addition, we go out now on hoarding and compulsive cluttering and cases like that where we have certain authorities based on the public health code to, you know, declare a house uninhabitable based on sanitary reasons. So we're seeing a little bit more of that.
What did the tropical storm do for you guys? Because you must have been running around, I know, when some of the power was going on and then was going back off again and then coming back on again up on Black Rock Turnpike. You had to go keep doing re-inspections and things like that. And did that, like, you have really high overtime numbers during those periods of time?
Well, you know, the way the storm fell, Sunday morning is when really the power started going out in Fairfield in a significant way. Monday morning, we were able to call our staff back in. And essentially, you know, most refrigerators can withstand about a 24-hour period without power and still maintain temperatures. But around that time, things started getting a little ripe. So they essentially, with you know, a twofold approach, doing phone surveys, calling places to see if they're answering the phone, if they're picking up, and questioning them. Then it was also, they were, one staff was doing that, and then directing field inspectors to go up and down the roads of the, you know, Black Rock Turnpike and Post Road, assessing where power was, when power was lost, and sort of getting a picture of, for each individual area within the town, you know, did they lose power? How long were they out power? And then going into the facilities and taking temperatures. We did have about 100 additional inspections that occurred in terms of places that were out without power. We identified them. We worked with the owners to make sure all the food was discarded, inventorying food for insurance claims and things like that. So it's a significant amount of work. They spent, you know, about that week probably, you know, the bulk of it doing it on Monday and Tuesday, and then going back and making sure they threw out the stuff. And we did, you know, have some fights there, and but essentially we did not have any outbreaks related to, you know, hundreds of establishments losing their power, and they were compliant throughout their food.
So in the end of the day, you didn't really have to use overtime for that? Those
Not related to
incidents?
that. We did have some
Thanks.
shelter costs, you know, for overtime, but related to food inspections, we were able to do that on time, just how the storm fell.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Welcome.
Could
Yes,
I have a
please.
quick follow-up to Mr. Walsh's question, and maybe Mr. Cleary could comment on it? One of the issues that we've been encountering here is what I'll call farmers markets that have come up, and the inspections on those, which are often on weekends, and it's taxed Mr. Cleary's department. You may want to comment on that piece just a little bit.
Sure. I mean, that's why we're requesting an increase in our overtime is based upon what we're seeing. And what we've established for a number of years is we have a revolving account that our fees related to temporary events, because we have 31 temporary events on average every year, 42 weekends out of the year. Nearly all of our events are on weekends or even on Sundays in some cases. So we take those funds and we have an account that we debit that over time. Farmers markets have become very popular, and there's also a lot of support in the state to limit any kind of fees and charges to promote Connecticut grown, and we're in favor of that. You know, as long as everybody's on board, that we're willing to take in less revenue, because right now, related to our farmers markets, the funds that we take in don't cover the costs related to 4 hours blocks of overtime on a weekend or on a Sunday, and we do have a lot of them, more so than most towns, and a lot of other towns have them during the week, and ours just happen to be, you know, 3 of them concurrent from April all the way to November almost. You know, and so we try to match that up, and, you know, when there's a fair at McKinley School, we'll have them cover the fair for a little bit, go over to the farmer's market, and try to share that overtime costs to balance it. But essentially, we're running, you know, under a little bit on that, and that's part of the reason for requesting a little bit more in overtime to sort of balance that out.
Interesting point. Thank you.
But again, that increase in overtime has been covered by reductions in other line items.
Right. Understood. Any board members have further questions? Ms. McCarthy-Vahey.
Just a comment, and I know you were here earlier, back to the grants. I know that grants are a big part of what you do, and again, it would be great. I know you come before the RTM, and it's kind of a laundry list, but it'd be very helpful, again, to know which the specific grants are and who and what is funded through those.
Sure.
Just as a sheet together. I think I'm really asking that in general, and that's a bigger picture issue, but just specifically for your department since you're here.
You want me to go through them? Is that what you're asking?
Not now,
Okay.
no. I'm just suggesting, and again, this was back what I was saying earlier in terms of how we create our budget book.
Sure.
That it would be great to have those things in one place so we can see
Yeah.
that together.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments from board members? No? All right, seeing none, we'll go to the public. Any members of the public have a comment on the Health Department budget? Seeing none, back to the board. Any final comments, thoughts? All right. Mr. Cleary, thank you. By the way, going to be handling any celebrity roast in the near future?
We'll see.
I can tell you, you did a great job at Mr. Brown's, I have to say.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Stuff of legend. You're turning red.
Have a good night.
And running away. All right, then. On to, finally, Human and Social Services. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
And if you could all just identify yourselves for the record, we know most of you are, but just so everyone else does, please.
My name is Selma Cohen. I'm Chairman of the Human Services Commission. Mark Andre,
My name is Mark Andre. I'm the Vice Chair.
Vice Chair. Kevin Lennon.
Kevin Lennon.
And Nancy.
Nancy Legary.
Good evening,
We're all
all.
commission members. And we're happy, I saw the agenda tomorrow, the Board of Selectmen had 2 new additions to complete the membership on our commission. I'm very happy to be here, but I don't pretend to be filling the shoes of the director of the senior center, Claire Grace. She is away.
Okay.
I'm happy to be here. We have a very vibrant, vital, active senior center in the old Oldfield School on Oldfield Road. I can tell you that the one major increase is the desperate need for a new bus, and it's been worked out, as it's explained on the back page.
That would be page 228 for everyone.
I'm on the wrong page. It's on 228, how the financing takes place, which is really a good opportunity. As Mark had said, when he looked at the buses that we now operate, that he wouldn't have his father ride in some of them. They're old, have done their duty. So with the money that is explained in the next year, fiscal 13, we're going to replace another vehicle.
Okay.
We did this year. Up until a couple of years ago, the senior center was managed under a contract by Family Service Woodfield, a private organization. And their contractual obligations did not include more than running the system, and it ran very well, but the maintenance of the interior was neglected.
Yes.
And so there's money in the budget as the only other really true increase for paint, carpeting, window treatment, a bringing up to date, an appearance that Fairfield Senior Center should enjoy.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we'll throw it open to board members for any questions, comments. Mr. Tetro.
Just a brief comment. Since this budget was put together with Claire Grace, Linda Gardner can help with some of the explanations in terms of the detailed numbers. This is another budget where you're going to see we did a lot of rebalancing.
Yes.
Moving costs from one item to another. And I think, Linda, in one case, we also moved some things from DPW over to here to more accurately reflect the cost of the senior center, I believe.
Mrs. Gardner, if you could just walk us through those briefly in terms of what we should be looking out for.
Right. This department, other than capital, really didn't ask for an increase. As the first selectman said, they redirected their funds better, and that was based on actual usage to where they really needed the funds. And I'll go through those line by line.
Please, thank you.
Okay. $3,650 was a reduced request out of fees and professional services.
Linda, if you wouldn't mind speaking to the mic a little bit better.
Sorry.
And we're on page 226, right?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Fees and professional services.
It's about halfway down.
Right, that's line 53200. $3,650, which was initially in the request for that line, was moved to the maintenance of building and grounds. As a matter of fact, all of the funds I'm going to mention all went into buildings and grounds, raising that from $15,000 to $32,000. The next line, 54150, motor vehicle fuel, we took $2,000 from that account.
I see the from, where's the two?
There's really not a from and to. It's really a rebalancing. It's really a rebalancing, right?
Just seeing the.
You're going to kind of see a lowering of those numbers, of those
It says
requests.
190%, which makes sense to me.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Okay. The third one, motor vehicle, maintenance repair of equipment, line 54310. We took $5,400 from that line. Office supplies, 56110. We took $1,750 from that line. Special department supplies, 56140. we took 1,500 from that line. Postage, 56150, we took 2,000 from that line. And travel and meeting, 58120, we took 1,000 from that line, or I should say moved. Those total move-out lines totaled 17,300, and we added back, as I said, 17,000 to the building and grounds. And we also have a list of the projects that buildings and grounds will accomplish, if you want to look at that, or I can send it to you as a handout.
Yeah, actually, if you could send us that via email, that would be much appreciated.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's go to Mr. Stone first, and then we'll go to Mr. Walsh.
The one thing I don't understand, you took 2,000 from postage. How did that end up at maintenance repair?
Maintenance repair of buildings and grounds? Because
Yeah.
that's where the need was.
Postage? What's,
Well, what we did is we, with the
You didn't-
department head, she looked at her actual usage, and when she looked at the
I
actual
got it. I
usage,
got it now.
she said, I don't really need it here, and I'd rather have it somewhere else.
okay.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to go to Mr. DeWitt, and then I'll go to you, Mr. Walsh.
Okay, a topic near and dear to my heart, and fair warning to Selectman McCarthy Vahey's going to be calling on her in a couple of days. Our charitable contributions. So last year, one of the Greater Bridgeport Transit Authority is one of our mandated charitable contributions. Last year's budget, we gave them, we approved $30,000. This year, you're telling me, we didn't give them a dime. So we're going to take that $30,000 and use it for a very good purpose for the new van or bus. How did that happen? How did we just not need to give any money to GBTA last year?
I'll explain that. That contract was for the paratransit contract, which picks up seniors, I think it's a half mile or three-quarter outside of a route. What happened through the efforts of Tom Gorman and GBTA, they went to the state and secured a grant to fund that. Therefore, the town did not have to pay that amount. And the amount of $30,000 that we were carrying is now being picked up by the state.
Okay.
So that frees up that fund. We didn't ask for it in the fiscal 13 year because we're aware that the state is going to pick that up. And now we can use that $30,000 or redirect it or send it back to the town. And the thought was that we would use it in part to purchase the bus.
Okay. Great news for the bus, but still back to the same issue I've had for the last 4 years, that we have charitable contributions that were mandated, that clearly GBTA is not a mandated requirement, because for whatever reason, we were supposed to give $30,000. I really don't care what the purpose was for.
Mr. DeWitt, if I could just suggest, before we go any further, that might be more appropriate for when we get to the discussion on the charitable contributions. I understand how it kind of ties in with this right now, but I think that question's been asked and answered, so we'll just leave it for when we have that discussion on charitable contributions.
$30,000 is available.
I also want to say, though, but
Yes?
don't confuse the charitable contribution or what you're calling private agencies with this contract. This contract just happened to be administered also by GBTA.
Yeah, the difference is this is paying for a service.
Yes, this was a contract for someone to provide something to us. This has nothing to do with their
We can
entity
address
as
it
a
when we
private
get to-
organization.
So you're saying they're non-connected issues?
Correct.
Exactly.
Understood.
We'll talk about it when we get to that. But
Yep.
but the $30,000 from that account is available
Now it is, yes.
for this van. All right.
You good?
I'm not good, but yeah.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman, I just want
Yes,
to
please.
clarify so that both boards are aware of this. The intent with the purchase, the capital purchase of the vehicle, is that this board, and this board only, once this hopefully might be approved by the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and RTM, that the $30,000 be encumbered from the current year's budget into next year, because we need that money to not buy half a bus.
Okay, understood.
Yeah, you're not making my case. You're making my case stronger for whenever. What day is that on?
We're getting
I don't
there.
miss that day.
Actually, that's coming up next week. All right. At this time, any other board members have questions, comments? Mrs. McCarthy Vahey?
I have a few, so bear with me.
Mr. Walsh, did you just have one or a quick one? I can slide you in first?
I can wait.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Motor vehicle fuel, this is fuel, I'm assuming, for the buses that travel around and pick up our seniors, correct? I'm looking at Mrs. Gardner, that's, so,
The travel and meeting account?
no, the motor vehicle fuel line.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
are we anticipating fewer trips?
Actually, after we did the rate and volume analysis, and we looked back at the historical usage, if you look at the prior 3 years, we had been using about $12,000. And given the anticipated increase in the rate, we thought the $14,000 would cover it.
Okay.
So actually, it's an increase over what's been used.
Gotcha, as to the actuals. Maintenance and repair of equipment, does that line item include maintenance and repair of the buses? And if not, where is that included in our budget?
That is primarily covered in the Public Works budget, exclusively.
Thank you. Postage, I noticed in the narrative that there is a plan for, and I guess clarify this if this is incorrect, a townwide survey to ascertain material for future expansion of center programs. And it looks like Mr. Tetra might be able to help with this one, but I'm thinking about senior citizens, and many of the ones who have met in the past year don't have email access, and how are we going to get that survey to them? And
Mr. Tetro?
Thank you. Claire Grace was actually very effective in going out and finding a private donor who would give money to fund that survey and that cost. So that's going out at I'm going to say no cost, but certainly minimal cost to the town in putting that together.
Thank you. May I continue?
Please do.
Thank you. That's wonderful news, and I'm going to go back again to the grants question. I know that there are grants available. I'm not sure what grants or donations there are that are currently being used for our human services budget, and it would be great to know what money is coming in via grants or other donations that impact us budget-wise. I have a couple other personnel questions, and maybe Mr. Hiller or Mrs. Gardner, you could help with these. The part-time social caseworker, and perhaps actually the commission members may as well. Am I misunderstanding or misremembering when I toured, I met 2 social workers? Are there actually 4 people who do social casework at the senior center? And perhaps this isn't a question that anyone here can answer.
I'd have to get back to you on specific personnel who are currently there right now as far as that.
Okay.
Okay, so we get back to us on that one?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. McCarthy-Vahey, can I just swing it to Mr. Walsh for a moment, and then I can come back to you?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh, please.
I'll give my time to Ms. McCarthy-Vahey. I'll explore my stuff offline. Thank you.
Okay.
The last,
gentleman.
actually, thank you. The last one was also related to personnel. Just the senior center program coordinator is, this looks like a change that was a position that wasn't filled last year, or can someone help me with, Mrs. Gardner, looks like you have an
I
answer.
think this board might remember, what happened is that position was cut by this board.
That's right.
And then there was an oops moment because thinking that they could defer a vacancy in that department, not realizing that that position a week before had been hired.
That's right. I knew
So
this.
even though we represented it as 0 in the approved budget for fiscal year 12, we still had to find a
Okay.
place to fund it.
So to clarify, this is a person who's in position now and would remain in position with this budget?
Yes, and
Okay.
who was in that position last year as well.
Right, okay. Thanks, that's it for me.
Thank you. Mr. Kiley?
Just quickly, and thank you for being here, and thank you for all you do. We really appreciate that. Just quickly, thank you. On the buses, and, thanks for putting the bus thing together because it's needed, and we have to have a a new bus down there. But on the buses, can you just quickly give me a synopsis of how many there are and how many there will be after we put the new one in service? Because we bought one a couple of years back. I just don't remember what year it was. Was it 2 years back?
2007.
7? Oh, is it? Wow, okay. I know.
Yes, Mr. Tetro.
And I believe there are two that are age 2007, bought in 2007. One we bought or was delivered a couple months ago.
Okay.
All right, and we're using one that's age year 2000.
There's a new bus.
Use the
There
mic,
are,
please.
I
I'm sorry.
believe, 5 vehicles.
Five buses.
5 vehicles, and
There's-
and as the first selectman indicates, we've just recently taken delivery on one which is a natural gas vehicle, which was 80% funded by a grant, and this board had allocated, I believe, $17,000, which was the matching 20%
Yeah, I remember that as well, yeah.
on that.
So the fleet, assuming they're all working and in good condition, the fleet that you need is 5. And right now you have 5, but you've got a bad one that you need to replace, so you'll be back to 5 operational buses?
The oldest one
the-
has 144,000 miles on it.
The older ones of the fleet really are not functional. Those are the ones Mr. Andre was kind enough to tell me that he wouldn't let his father or daughter ride in them, but I should take a ride.
Mr. Andre, a Republican by chance?
That's
I was with my daughter, and we had a little tour around town, and
Yeah.
I came to the conclusion I would not let my dad, take a spin on it.
Well, that certainly is the acid test, so we appreciate that. Thank you.
So
Fair
what-
enough.
The target is to have 3 functional buses.
Okay.
With a 4th kind of backup one that would provide some of that. So that's really what the target is.
Right.
As they age past that, we're going to try and get rid of them by selling them or something else. And we are working to try and get on every year or two, getting one bus in. We're doing a little bit of catch-up now. We got one this year. We'd like to get one next year. We would also be applying for a grant for another natural gas bus, but that would probably be kind of 2 years off based on, we may or may not get approved. We'd have some flexibility in when we ordered it, so we'd push that off for a little bit. So the idea is to spread off the buses so we don't kind of reach that cliff where we've got, I think there are 2 that are age 2007 that are,
Bus 3 and bus number.
What's that?
3 and 2 are 2007.
okay, so there are 2 that are in 2000. We don't want to have 2 in 1 year to the extent that we can so that we don't have a cliff where we've got to
Right.
replace.
Right.
Because if we have to replace them, they're expensive.
Right.
As long as we get grants, it's relatively inexpensive to do that.
Great, thank you. So just to clarify for me, once, between the one that we just put into service and between this new one, you would have 3 good operational dependable buses and a 4th adequate kind of a backup, putting aside the 5th one,
Right.
give or take. And that's good, right?
Better.
Okay, good, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kiley. Anything further?
No, I'm good.
All right, any other questions from board members? Yes, Mrs. Leclerc.
Okay, I have a question on, under highlights and goals, it has remodeling the centers halls, painting, new lighting, rugs, and upgrading the bathrooms to ADA compliancy. And I think the renovations are definitely well overdue, that you really need them. But when we look at the schools, our bathroom renovations have been quite more than what we're putting in here. And so it can't be a full bathroom renovation. So I wanted to know what the plans are for the bathrooms, and are they all ADA compatible now?
No. The issue is removing them and getting into asbestos.
Oh, if you could use the mic a little.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
The issue is removing Oldfield School children's lavatory facilities. And, I mean, that school was built, I think, in 1950 or thereabout. And asbestos was used in the building. And so that it's a very extensive job, expensive and extensive to get them ADA approved.
Yep. This board had a chance to tour Oldfield School, the senior center, 2 years ago. All right. unlike, the Board of Education has been proposing going in and redoing all their bathrooms, the entire gang, and all gets set up. Everything is brand new inside there, including the plumbing behind the walls. New tile, new fixtures, new everything. If you walk in the bathrooms at the senior center now, you'll see that each has at least one ADA compatible stall and fixture, but certainly the whole gang isn't done, so that's why the cost, this is the absolute minimum you could do. I mean, it's not anywhere near all the bathrooms are ADA compliant, or all the stalls are ADA compliant.
And should they be, or should we be considering doing more? Or
Yes.
No. And you know, because
Doesn't make sense to have a building where the primary users can't use the bathrooms.
there was neglect for all those years where there was no interior upkeep.
I mean, it's not like we're the DOT building new railroad stations.
right.
Do you have anything further, Mrs. Leclerc?
A lot of catch-up.
I'm sorry, did anybody get that?
I guess maybe we are hesitating a little bit asking for more money. Maybe that's, I mean,
Right,
are you saying that we're not asking enough to bring the facility up to date?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
mean-
Are we covering our need? Is this, no?
Well, I can tell you my personal stories beside the bus. We were last week at a different event, and I sat down at a table with another member, and she told me, she used the center, and she said, hey, Mark, can you talk to DPW and see if we can get a plug? Because each time I go there to use the computer, I have to run an extension cord. Of course, that's not really safe. I visited the center a couple times, and some of the exit doors, they cannot even open them. So, I mean, we're not really asking a lot, but there's some basic stuff that we really can do to help the people using that place. Maybe some of us can't really relate because, you know, we're a little bit young and we probably don't go there often, but maybe our aging parent might be going there. Maybe me, you know, a few years from now, I may be going over there and just make a few more friends. But I would like the place to at least be in, you know, in a decent shape. So, you know, we basically scratching the surface a little bit. We're just asking for the minimum that we really think we need now, and then maybe over time, and we keep doing a little bit more repair. I'm in the construction business. I visited that place, and the complaint, you know, they're replacing the carpet, and it's taking forever. That's not really acceptable. And when we're thinking of the people who actually helped build this town and using that place, I'm afraid to say it's a bit disgraceful.
Mr. Chair, if I might?
Yes, please, Mr. Tatro.
Just to build on that, there were certain projects that were being done in the senior center during the current year. When we looked at this budget, we sat down and took this money and said, you know, where else can we use that? One of the first questions was, do we use it to supplement the Thursday meals that were cut by the state program? And the director said, no. We found a way to kind of finesse that and allow for Thursday meals, not quite at the same level as before, but at least something for the participants. Right. These improvements are more important. As we get these done, the idea is I've asked Rich White to make sure this is added to the town facilities plan. So we go back and look at this and start putting this on a regular cycle of what we need to do. In terms of some of the bonding, we didn't need to redo as much of the roof, so potentially we saved some money on bonding for that.
That's good
So
news.
as we look at this, perhaps going forward, we could utilize some of that bonding money that was freed up. Obviously, every time you bond something new, it's more money. I don't mean to suggest that, but because we were able to be cost-effective in how we did the roof. We only needed to do half the roof, not the whole roof when we did that. So that was less than we planned to go through on that. So this will be getting a closer look going forward than it has been in the past.
Now, that's good to know because, you know, oftentimes it seems like the senior center is like the forgotten stepchild when it comes to the town facilities, and I think it definitely needs to be kind of on the list, just like we do the Board of Ed having the long-range facilities plan, and we're starting to get that way for the town. I think having the senior center as part of that process is a good step in the right direction. So, Mrs. Leclerc, did you have anything further, or are you good?
I guess I'm good.
Okay.
Just wanted to say we'll be back because the Human Services Commission has never appeared before the Board of Finance, ever in history, asking for our budget requests.
Right.
So we are on top of it. And we
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Appreciate that you understand. that
certainly
there is-
do.
There is a neglect of years, and we need a big catch-up over the coming years.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, any further comments, questions from board members? Nope. All right, we'll go to the public. Any questions, comments from members of the public? Step on up. Do we have a mic? There we go.
Hi, Ken Lee, Rhode Avenue. As a proud graduate of Oldfield School, class of 64.
You're not that old, are you?
I'm even older.
And unfortunately, I can...
Took me 4 years. Get out of 6th grade.
Yeah, that's right.
And unfortunately, I can vouch for Mr. Lee being that old.
I can imagine it needs a little bit of refurbishing. And I'm with you, Mrs. LeClaire. I'm not sure how I can go home and explain to my mother why we're going to spend $149 million on education, and we have to really think hard about spending $560,000 for the seniors. My understanding is that, you know, budgets can get smaller, and also budgets can get larger when appropriate. And I would hope that we would all maybe take a few minutes. I know that there's a budget hearing at Oldfield, I believe, open, and maybe take a look around and see if maybe we need to reconsider if this is a sufficient amount to give the seniors what they have earned, because they're the people that built the town that we're in. So I really think that we have to give that some thought, and I would encourage you at least to give this what they're asking for. It sounds like not much at all, comparatively speaking. I mean, it's not that it's no money, but you know, we have to be responsive to everyone in town. You know, we have artificial turf for my son to play soccer on. I think my mom needs a little something too. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Just to piggyback on what Mr. Lee was saying, the public comment, which is our Saturday session where we invite members of the public to come on out and basically it's your day to come on out and fire away at the Board of Finance and let us know what you're thinking. That is on Saturday, March 24th. It's going to be 9:30 a.m. at the Senior Center at Oldfield School. And I know in years past we have done like a little tour of the facilities to kind of get a sense of where things are at and how it relates to what's being requested in the budget process. So again, it's March 24th, 9:30. We'll certainly advertise it, and we hope we get a good turnout. Last year was actually pretty good, so just to make that plug. All right, at this time, any other questions? Mr. Tetro, yes.
Just to add on, so that the board is clear, one of the things we're doing with this survey is going back out to seniors and saying, what do you like about the services that we offer? What additional services could we offer to get you to use the center more? One of the questions is, what do we have to do to get more seniors into the center?
Yeah.
We've got a great facility there, and something that certainly we want to continue to improve on, as has been mentioned, but we also want more usage out of it. So we're trying to get out, and in the business world, we're trying to talk to our customers and see what they want and need and see how we can address their needs going forward to make it more responsive to the seniors in our community.
Thank you, Mr. Tetro. All right, we're back to the board for any final comments, questions. Mr. Walsh.
With our social service director leaving, what's her name leaving? Miss at the end of the year, isn't she leaving? Yeah, she's not leaving? Oh, I thought I heard she was leaving. Okay.
You guys want to take this outside, or?
No, okay. No, okay. I thought I heard there was a retirement in that area someplace. So there's no retirement at all in that area.
Mr. Tetro, would you care to respond?
Just to clarify, and Claire, if you're watching, Claire hasn't said anything about any target date for her retirement or anything else. I haven't heard about anybody else, but Claire hasn't mentioned a thing in our discussions.
So I guess you're saying those people working down their auto just watch their back as they're walking around town, right? All right. Seeing that we're done with final comments, questions, thank you very much for your time here tonight. We greatly appreciate it.
I have some material that you can look at.
If you could give that to Mr. Hiller and he can distribute. Thank you. All right, one final note before we move to adjourn. I just want to point out those town officials and members of the public who wish to attend the wake for Tom Flynn's father. It's going to be up at the Della Vecchia Funeral Home in Wolcott. The wake will be tomorrow from 5 to 8 p.m., And then the funeral mass will be 11 a.m. Up in Wolcott. So if you request that information, I'm sure one of us can get it to you. You can certainly email me, and I can forward it along. So just want to make sure everybody knows about that. All right, with that, do we have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Brockfeld, second, and Mrs. McCarthy-Vehy. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, everyone. We're adjourned.